Welcome to the Practical Wealth Show. So, the title of this show is Before You Invest, the step most people skip. Okay. So, I'm recording this in my hotel room. That's why I have the headset on. I'm in Atlanta here at InvestFest. Shout out, Earn Your Leisure. And it's been wonderful. I'm having a great time. And it's great to be in an environment where people are talking about winning, about money, about success. We were at the airport. That's a whole other story. But we had to switch airlines, and it was a bunch of us. This is the InvestFest table. It's like 10 o'clock at night. Our flight's been canceled. And it was, I want to say it was about five brothers, black men, sitting around the table talking about money, taxes, investing, what we're doing. And this woman came up to us who was also there, and she is a trucking company. She's going to be a guest soon. But she's like, this warms my heart to see men. All right. So sorry for my white brothers and sisters, but black men talking positive we hadn't been to the event yet. So that was great. So that's what I've been seeing. And, and so I let yesterday, I'm going to go to more of the sessions on the main stage. Yesterday, I sat through this, the theme I kept running into, but yesterday I wanted to meet the vendors, the business owners, and see what they were doing and what they were offering. And I like to get down in the trenches and see what they were doing. So I spent most of yesterday to that, but the few sessions I sat in, this basic thought kept going through my mind because they were talking about, I call it affectionately the accumulation theory, buy and hold, dollar cost average. They had people there from Schwab, and they were talking about ETFs and all that stuff, right? So I'm going to share my screen. So if you're listening to this, you might want to get on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to the audio, let me share my screen because I think this is important. Where is it? And now, of course, I can't find it. Let's see. Now, let's find it. Sorry for the tech. There we go. So now, so if y'all are familiar with this image behind me, the personal economic model. So I just want to show you where I'm coming from because I think in pictures. So I think investing is not step one. Now, but see, I get it. Investing is sexy. It's 20 plus thousand people here. So you're not going to get them out and flying in from Philly, from California to basically talk about what I'm about to show you. But this needs to be talked about. So as I meet people, it's like, okay, let's kind of fill in the blanks here because I'm the defensive coordinator. And here's what I mean when I say this. Hopefully y'all can see the screen. So when you look at your personal economic model, you've got income going through your big tank. You've got taxes. Shout out tax filters. So we have a shout out Rashid. We're doing a tax strategy class this week. And check out, I'll see if I can link the show. Revenue is not enough. If you're making money, you're doing your number one expenses is taxes. So you got to keep more of your money in a strategy to do that. But what we want to talk about, so then it's yellow tank. So InvestFest is talking about the yellow tank primarily, okay? And primarily paper, but not complete. So so if you want to become, you got to see, because what you do is dictated by what you're trying to achieve. So, you can invest for capital gains when markets go down, right? And you can't control any of that. That's why we call that the risk tank, right? And there's some real estate coaches here, and then I like that, or business coaches, and they're talking about cash flow, right? You can't eat equity, and financial freedom means you got passive income equal to or greater than your expenses. So when I'm running into people, I said, well, how does an ETF growing this create wealth? It just creates what I call statement wealth, meaning that your investment is worth whatever the net asset value of those funds or stocks are at 3 o'clock at the end of the close of Wall Street. So, that's kind of an illusion, if you will. I mean, it's important. Like, I'm not saying not do that. Hear me. And I'm not throwing shade at this. I just give you my perspective. And so the interesting thing is this. So everything here is focused on the yellow tank, but let me clear this. Here's the order of what we teach. This is the part of the Money for Life blueprint. And so I think this is really important. You can't save your way to financial freedom, but I think you have to, we call this the lifestyle regulator, but you would call it your budget. So your income, expense, your statement of cash flow if you're in business, right? So money comes into your world through inflows. You've got to tell it where to go. It's going to lifestyle for a lot of people and out and down the drain. So you have to create a surplus. You have to spend less than you make so that you can save 15 to 20% of your gross income. So step one, manage cash flow, the route of rich man Babylon, part of all your earners keep, right? Budget thy expenses. So you got to make a decision that I'm going to pay myself first. 2, you have to manage cash flow so that you can create capital, right? Savings. And you have to make your goal multiply, which is looking for assets to buy that generates growth or income, right? So step 1, cash flow control. Step 2, save. Let me define savings. Safe, liquid, accessible, guaranteed. You want compounding. So what goes in the green tank? Savings accounts, high yield accounts, money markets. My favorite place to store money in what we call the green tank is the private reserve strategy is properly structured dividend paying whole life. I was seeing people there that were talking about being the bank, but they were selling IUL. So, that drives me crazy. And for more reasons, I have time to talk on this short video. But so what happens is you want to be able to save, and preferably you want to be able to, because what people do is they save, even if it's to buy assets, and then they drain the tank, and they save and they drain the tank. And so you finance everything you buy. So you take money out the tank, that money's not making money. Even if you buy an asset, because there's a way to have your cake and eat it too. So when you store your cash, you want to store it somewhere that allows you to use it via collateralization, right? So if you can save your money and then you can use your money as security, then you could collateralize it. We use cash value insurance, but just conceptually, I don't want to go into a product right now. And then now you can use that money for expenses, big ticket items, which we define as anything you can't pay for in full within your cash flow, or better yet, for opportunities to make money. Okay. And then, so that's step 2. So now if you're in debt, then, we're kind of doing a push. Debt free is not enough, because if you just focus on getting out of debt, because you can't outrun inefficiency. So if you're trying to chase performance over here, but you've got 23, 29% credit cards milling you down, that is a wealth transfer. A transfer means going from your checking account to the bank. Taxes going from your checking account to the Treasury Department. So you've got to eliminate those drains on your personal economy, right? So we'll do another talk on debt to capital, but what you want to do is, I would consider not so much getting out of debt, but debt recapture 2A, right? But you've got to pay yourself first. And people, they just want to get out of debt. No, you got to, first rule of wealth is pay yourself first. But if you store it, because the question is, where do you warehouse your wealth, right? So if you store it somewhere, then if you have debt, you could save money, right? And you could use the capital you have to borrow against it, pay off that debt. And then when so from an accounting standpoint, the numbers are the same, but you just want to pay it back, which releases your money to turn around and do it again and again and again. So the debt is gone. Now you have your non-preferred debt and still have your capital intact. So that's so that's 2, right? So 3 which this is definitely going to get 20,000 people to come talk about this. So three, let me clear that, is protection, right? So this is where I live, right? So you have to play defense. You have to, do you have life insurance? We all live until we don't. Do you have disability insurance, health insurance? You got to play defense. You have to build, we call it building a moat around your castle. Do you have proper at least $1 million of umbrella coverage? Do you have maximum protection with your car and auto? So all this stuff, do you have eventually now wills and, at least a living will, revocable living will, and a trust. I mean, I'm sorry, a will, and a trust. That's the foundation of your estate plan. That's just a asset protection tool. We're not getting into, dynasty trusts or asset protection trusts. We did that. No, there are different levels to this stuff. Depends on where you are. So if you're starting, I would because one of the things I'll tell people, look, I'll see people like this. They want to invest, but they don't have any savings and they have debt. See, that's a symptom of cash flow control. But if you look like this, if you're seeing my screen and you have $1,000 in the bank, $3,000 in the bank, $5,000 in the bank, should you be pouring all your money into a Roth or into your 401k? I would ask you to think about, I'm not going to tell you what to do, not your financial advisors for education purposes, but we like to break up your liquidity into two parts: your emergency fund. So really we say 6 months to a year, but let's say 1 to 3 months, 1 to 4 months is your emergency fund. Like if you don't have that, I don't think you should be over here in the yellow tank, because if something comes up, here's only two options you have. You got to drain the tank. You got to sell your shares to turn it into cash. Or if you can't get to it because it's tied up, then you've got to do what? Use other people's money, which is basically using future earnings as collateral, right? So if you want to get out of debt and stay out of debt and then build a foundation that you don't have to go backwards, then I would say, here is the order that we try to share with people. Manage cash flow so you can save. 3 is protect. 4 is everything that I'm learning here. Everything they're talking about here is investing, yellow tank. So, if you go back to Kiyosaki, there's 4 asset classes, right? I was listening to Tom Wheelwright video a little while ago. So there's business, there's real estate, there's paper, and there's commodities. So what I have people think about is, we talk about our 3 rules of investing: invest in what you know, or invest in knowing, invest in what you can control. Can your knowledge influence the performance? Does it cash flow? And our 3rd rule is don't chase returns. So most people, because they aren't willing to learn to be, right, to become an investor, are chasing returns. And so Wall Street gives you an easy button. Oh, you don't have to worry about all that stuff. Just give your money to us, right? So remember, what are the 4 rules of the financial institutions? They want your money. They want it on a regular basis. They want to keep it as long as possible, and they want to give it back as slow as possible, if ever, because they're using your money to create velocity while they're teaching you to buy and hold. So now, I'm not throwing them under the bus. That's unique to the financial industry. That's how they work, and that's their job. So, but you have to get better, and you've got to learn what we like to call the financial physics so that you can keep more of your money. You have control. My operative word is I want you to have control, right? As your knowledge goes up, your risk comes down. I don't think there are risky investments. I think there are risky investors, because you don't know what you're doing. And so if you can't tell me how it works, you're not investing, you're speculating. And see, that's Wall Street playing with the definitions, and words have meaning, right? And there's definition. In fact, I'm going to teach my Saturday class, and we're going to talk about this. So in Benjamin Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor, who was Warren Buffett's mentor, he says the first chapter in the book is investing versus speculation. So I may butcher this, but what is it in his mind, Charlie Munger's mind? Investment is something that after thorough investigation. So that knocks out most people right there. After thorough investigation, you deploy your capital and you can expect safety of principal. I don't even know how you do that, right? But safety of principal. So principal is, you got to learn the terminology, is if you put in 5,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever, your principal is safe, okay? And you have a reasonable opportunity to make a profit. That is an investment, okay? And he's talking about, this is a book about the stock market, and because he was a securities guy. And then he said, if it doesn't fit that definition, you are speculating, i.e. gambling, right? So I'm not saying speculation is wrong. I just, I'd like to see you have a better foundation so that you can let it rip, right? So I want you to have your savings up. I want you to have things that generate cash flow. I want you to use constructive debt to buy a real asset that generates more money than the debt costs you. Boom, now you're golden. So all you got to do now is do the right things, be a good steward of your resources, and watch your personal economy grow. And so that's what I'm trying to pull that together. And I think but there's a lot of stuff on paper, investing in Africa. There's a lot of ways to become an investor. But I think that, and these are not linear, right? These can be concurrent, okay? But I do think there's an order. Say, manage cash flow, save. You got to have insurances. You got to have protection. You should be, while you're saving, using your savings to recapture your debt, not just focusing on debt. And we have a program called Debt to Capital. You can hit us up or look in the show notes for that, to that information. We have a little digital book on that called Debt to Capital. And then you invest, right? And so I would be doing them all the time. So if you don't really know what you're doing, yeah, by all means, I would fund your 401k up to the match, okay? But I like people to learn, develop little cash machines. What are the things that you could do, sell, that can generate new money, because to me, your number one asset is you, right? So you can invest in your number one asset. So these people down here are investing in their mindset, their skill set, and their network. That is, to me, the purpose of InvestFest. And then I believe your number one asset is or your business, and then your profits need to be saved, and then use your savings to buy more assets, or cash flow, as you like to call them. So that's the order. That's my little, thought exercise for today. I hope that helps somebody. I just think investing step 4, right? So what are the steps? Control your cash flow, build liquidity, get rid of non-preferred debt, right? And then if you follow our framework, the Money for Life framework that we teach, earn money, bank it, a portion of it, 15% or more, somewhere lets you be the bank, borrow against your bank, spend it. What do you spend on? Debt recapture, major capital purchase, anything that you would normally finance. You want to control the debt, because if 35 cents of every dollar you're leaving your household in the form of debt, and another 30, 35, 40% to taxes, and then the rest of you living on, and you're trying to save 5, 10%, it's hard. It's so much inefficiency. It's easier to reduce taxes, reduce your debt, to free up money to save, and then learn how to buy with real things, right? So there's an order. So I just want y'all to think about that as your day. By the time I release this will be over, but I wanted to get this out this morning while I was still fresh in my mind. I hope this helps somebody. And like I said, I'm not, to be clear, I'm not in criticizing investors. I think what they're doing is important. I want people thinking about ownership, entrepreneurship, and investing, right? What I'm saying is, when I hear all these strategies, reminding me that a strategy works better when it sits inside of a financial operating system. And I just showed you ours. And so stay tuned. Our next episode, once we've built the foundation, how do you evaluate productive assets? Okay. How does one use debt to acquire assets that actually make sense? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, debt freedom, the order of putting that together. So that's where we're going to go on the show for the next 2 or 3, 4 episodes. and sprinkle with some guests. And we're going to talk about money. That's my favorite topic. You guys go make it a profitable day.